Right, so the world is getting smaller and smaller for Israel, it seems, as a large chunk of South America has turned its back on the genocidal apartheid state, and for those nations that haven't, pressure is mounting on them to do so. Following Bolivia ending diplomatic ties with Israel over Gaza all the way back in 2023, others have been catching up now. And in recent weeks, this has accelerated all the more, in stark contrast to much of the rest of the Western world still, with movements in Peru, Colombia, Brazil and Chile notably all taking actions recently to distance themselves still further from and even take action against Israel. It is heartening to see that in a world where too many governments choose silence or complicity, the several nations in South America are forging a radically different path, be it via criminal proceedings, BDS, or public solidarity with the Palestinian people, or outright rejection of Israeli aggression. The genocide in Gaza, perpetrated by the Israeli government and its military, has sparked global outrage. But it is in South America where that outrage is being transformed more and more into meaningful action that the rest of the world would do rather well to take some notice of. Right, so from launching criminal investigations against Israeli soldiers to banning coal exports and weapons sales, the nations of Brazil, Chile, Colombia and Peru are right now sending out a clear message that Israel's conduct is not above international law, and genocide will not be met with diplomatic courtesies or business as usual. Their actions amount to more than just a protest, you see, because what they have been collectively doing between them could be the beginnings of a framework for an all-new moral world order. As increasingly more people around the world, and therefore pressure on more and more governments around the world, demand such a thing. Let's start with Peru. I've covered several stories previously involving the Hind Rajab Foundation, you might recall them, the Belgium-based NGO named after the little girl whose family car was deliberately targeted by the IDF in Gaza, who have sought arrest warrants around the world, not just for leading figures like, for example, Israel's Foreign Secretary Gideon Saar when he visited the UK under diplomatic immunity, but others as well. They particularly become feared by IDF holidaymakers worldwide, in case a warrant comes for them if they happen to go abroad. And for the first time, Peru has targeted an Israeli national for crimes committed in Gaza, and although the individual in question has not been named, it is known that they served in the IDF's Combat Engineering Corps, is being investigated for his alleged role in methodical destruction in Gaza, including the use of excessive force targeting civilians and involvement in systematic atrocities, and that video footage apparently exists of the individual in question having been celebrating whilst detonating a civilian building. The significance of this legal action can't be overstated because this is yet another country joining in this kind of action. Peru, for the first time, is now using universal jurisdiction, the legal principle that allows states to prosecute crimes like genocide, like war crimes, regardless of where they occur or who commits them. And in doing so, Peru is asserting that Israel cannot commit crimes with impunity under the pretense of self-defense or military necessity and visit their country. And is yet one more nation, therefore, where for Israelis, travel abroad is no longer a safe option. This follows a growing global momentum where legal bodies and human rights organisations are turning to the courts when diplomatic channels fail. While many Western governments continue to shield Israel from accountability, Peru's move cracks the facade that Israel and those committing the atrocities on their behalf, those who might claim to be just following orders, cannot hide from. It also pressures other nations in Latin America and beyond to follow suit. So the precedent is being made louder than ever and is very clear. If genocide is committed, it must be prosecuted, no matter who the perpetrator is or where they happen to be. You either stand up for international law, you see, or you're part of the problem that is weakening it. Moving on to Colombia, and last month President Gustavo Petro appointed Colombia's first ever ambassador to Palestine, Jorge Ivan Ospina, in an act that directly challenges Israel's legitimacy as any sort of moral actor on the world stage. Speaking during his appointment, Ospina said the world can no longer turn a blind eye to what is happening in Gaza, and warned of the macabre intent to eradicate the identity of a people. Colombia's break with Israel didn't begin last month, though. In February of last year, Colombia took action to ban arms purchases from Israel, a country that has long profited from selling weapons battle-tested as too often documented on the people of Palestine themselves. And then in August of last year, Colombia halted all coal exports to Israel, citing Tel Aviv's violations of international law and their refusal to adhere to the International Court of Justice's rulings on Gaza. Israel's power stations are still, for the most part, coal-fired, so perhaps if they were I don't know, less obsessed with nuclear weapons and more interested in nuclear power, as, for example, Iran are doing, contrary to what Israel is saying, this wouldn't be so painful for them. And that same year, diplomatic ties with Israel were suspended entirely. Colombia, once a major purchaser of Israeli arms and a regional ally of them in South America, is now actively dismantling those ties and building new ones with Palestine. Its planned embassy to be sited in Ramallah in the West Bank will not be a hollow gesture, it will be a solid hub of solidarity, humanitarian coordination and diplomatic realignment, as well as incensing Israel no end, as it is sure to do. This is a country reclaiming its moral compass when, for so many other nations, keeping those diplomatic ties comes with a side of blood on their hands. In Brazil, the change is coming from people power, because it's the oil workers' union, some of the largest and most powerful unions in the country, that are now demanding an energy embargo on Israel. The rationale is quite simple. Israel cannot sustain a genocidal campaign in Gaza while simultaneously benefiting from Brazilian crude oil. And like Colombia's coal, it hits Israel right where it hurts, as dependent as they are on fossil fuel imports. In a region where oil is power, Brazil's union-led campaign strikes at the heart of Israel's economic and military apparatus. Energy powers tanks and drones and fighter jets. It fuel embargoes cut directly into the logistics of war. So by denying Israel access to these critical resources they're so reliant on, these unions are saying what many governments are refusing to say. If you want to bomb children, you won't be doing it with our oil. Chile's government under President Gabriel Boric has probably taken the most systematic and far-reaching measures yet against Israel from a South American state. As of this month, Chile officially withdrew its military, defence and air force attaches from Tel Aviv in direct protest against the war in Gaza, all part of a broader re-evaluation of its entire relationship with Israel as this is. Chile has also announced plans to diversify its defence procurement, reducing its reliance on Israeli military technology. And this is crucial for two reasons. Israel's economy is deeply reliant on arms exports, many of which are tested in Gaza and marketed globally as proven in real-world combat scenarios, whilst also signalling that the era of Chile's silent complicity through military trade is ending. More importantly, President Boric has drawn up legislation to ban the import of goods, all goods, produced in illegal Israeli settlements, direct challenge to Israel's illegal occupation of the West Bank. This would place Chile's national laws alongside the international norms as set out by UN Security Council Resolution 2334, which deems Israeli settlements a flagrant violation of international law, which of course they are. And it shouldn't be a big deal, actually, that a country aligns their domestic law with international rulings in such a way. And yet it always seems to be, because this hardening of Chile's stance has not gone unnoticed. And I'm not talking about Israel here at this point either, because reports suggest that the United States, under the command of the tyrannical Tangerine, passing himself off as the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, is currently throwing all of his toys out of the pram following his dramatic breakup with Elon Musk. And in Pride Month as well. So sad. It's considering sanctions apparently against Chile now for daring to break ties with Israel's military establishment. If true, then, rather than sanctioning Israel for genocide, the US is targeting those who dare to hold Israel accountable. And given this happened to Colombia last year over their not dissimilar actions, it's entirely likely this is coming Chile's way as well. But it's a classic case of punishing the whistleblower while protecting the criminal. Collectively, large parts of South America, there are exceptions, such as the chainsaw-wielding weirdo in Argentina, is demonstrating that meaningful solidarity is not just about flags and slogans and saying nice things. It's about action. There has to be action. It has to be meaningful. We're way past time for the need for action, and yet we see so little of it, do we? So these South American nations have been doing stuff, and you probably haven't heard of any of it, because if you did, you might want your own leaders to do something similar, wouldn't you? It's a shame I just can't shut my mouth about talking about such things, eh? What these countries are doing can be broken down into concrete and easily replicable steps by any other nation on earth. There's legal accountability through universal jurisdiction. Individuals responsible for war crimes can and must be prosecuted. Peru's investigation is a trailblazing example of that. Then there's diplomatic reconfiguration. Colombia's ambassadorial appointment to Palestine and severing of ties with Israel serves as a blueprint for principled diplomacy. Trade sanctions and resource embargoes, coal and oil embargoes, arms sales bans, import restrictions, these choke the flow of blood money to Israel's war machine. And then there is public and trade union pressure. Brazil's unions, Chile's civil society, student groups across the continent, across the world, are mobilizing for boycotts and political action. So this is a multi-pronged approach we're looking at here. Legal, economic, diplomatic and grassroots. The only path forwards for those serious about ending the genocide in Gaza. And all of that goes all the way back to ordinary working class people saying enough is enough. That's where it begins. South America knows what dictatorship and colonialism and state violence look like. From Argentina's dirty war to Chile's Pinochet regime, these nations have lived through their own genocides and authoritarian nightmares. Their collective memory has taught them that justice delayed is justice denied. They can educate the rest of us, therefore. We can emulate their action, and that waiting for the right time to act business is actually just excuse-making and a moral failure by any leader making it. Moreover, these actions resonate deeply with South America's historical support for liberation struggles. Whether in opposition to apartheid South Africa or colonial rule in Africa and Asia, many of these countries have long-standing traditions of standing with the oppressed. The current wave of solidarity with Palestine is not a trend, therefore. It's a continuation of this anti-imperialist, anti-colonial legacy that they have. What Israel is doing in Gaza is not a conflict, it is a genocide. It is an ethnic cleansing being carried out in plain sight with the full backing of Western powers, particularly the United States and the United Kingdom. So in this bleak landscape, South America has emerged as a rare beacon of hope and morality, and more power to their elbow. By launching investigations, cutting diplomatic ties, banning arms and coal exports, diversifying defence procurement, imposing trade bans on settler goods, these nations are not just protesting, they are resisting. They are refusing to be complicit a moment longer. They are refusing to normalise genocide, as so many others desperately seem to be trying to do. And it's pretty sad that this isn't the obvious and natural course of action for us all. And in doing so, they are offering the rest of the world a very simple but urgent message. It is not enough to just condemn it, you've got to act against it too. The question now is whether other nations will follow their lead or remain silent, as children continue to die under the rubble of Gaza, as families are torn apart and destroyed, and as a people are erased. Much of South America has chosen its side. The rest of the world must choose too, and they need to choose wisely. And as if to underline just what it means to be on the side of Israel, we now come to the cover for further genocide being provided by an aid scheme that Mossad are literally funding, as they harvest data at the same time and take lives at the very distribution centres desperate Palestinians have been heading to for aid. But with less than 80% of the aid Israel has passed to enter Gaza actually reaching those distribution hubs, where is the rest of it going? Well, it's not Hamas thieves, as it turns out, but ISIS-affiliated ones. And the paper trail to them has led straight back to Netanyahu himself now. Get all the details of that explosive story in this video recommendation here, as your suggested next watch. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content, as well as spreading the word and helping to support the channel at the very same time, which is very much appreciated, holding power to account for ordinary working class people. And I will hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.